My mother lifted her champagne glass and called my brother the child who served with his mind when she turned toward me and smiled sweetly. Then she told 200 wedding guests that I was just logistics, the daughter who moved paperwork while my brother built a real patriotic future. Before I could breathe, the bride's mother set down her fork, looked straight at me, and said, "Major, stand up." Every nearby conversation stopped cold. What happened next did not just silence my parents. It exposed what my brother had borrowed from my career and why Teresa Hart recognized me. My name is Hannah Mercer. I am 34 years old, an Army logistics major, and until that moment I had spent most of my life being introduced as the daughter who organized things instead of accomplishing them. My younger brother, Ethan, was the version of success my parents found easiest to display. He spoke confidently, shook hands well, wore custom suits, and sold supply software to defense contractors without ever having to serve a single day in uniform. I wore one. To my parents, that still made him the impressive child. The wedding reception was in a renovated riverfront hotel outside Charleston. White roses climbed the stage, a jazz trio played near the dance floor, and my parents behaved as if the marriage joined our family to a more important class of people. Olivia Hart, Ethan's bride, was kind, calm, and more observant than my brother realized. Her mother, Teresa Hart, sat 3 seats away from me at the head table. To everyone else, she was simply the bride's elegant mother. To me, she was retired Colonel Teresa Hart, now director of a regional disaster medicine network. 2 years earlier, we had worked through one catastrophic night together. That night began with floodwater, a collapsed access road, and a rural trauma hospital losing generator capacity faster than anyone expected. I was the logistics major on the joint coordination team. Teresa was then serving as a civilian incident liaison, moving between the hospital administrators, the state emergency office, and the helicopter crews, trying to keep patients alive. Her adult son, Luke, was a flight nurse attached to one of the medical evacuation teams. When fuel went short, roads disappeared, and a bridge inspection shut down the fastest route out, logistics became the difference between panic and movement. I built a new route grid from a folding table, redirected fuel trucks before the helicopters grounded, shifted ambulances to a church parking lot half a county away, and kept a refrigerated medicine load from being stranded in water up to its axles. No one at my family's table knew that story because I had never told it in full. My parents had spent years translating everything I did into something smaller. If I supervised a convoy, they called it shipping. If I coordinated air movement, they called it scheduling. If I kept people alive, they called it organization. So when my mother rose for her wedding toast, I was already prepared for the usual. She praised Ethan's ambition, his business instincts, and the way he knew how to get into the right rooms. She said Olivia was gaining not only a husband, but a man who understood national service from the strategic side. Then she turned toward me and gave the room the smile she used when she wanted to sound gracious while drawing blood. "And Hannah," she said, "has always been our practical daughter. She's just logistics. She moves things around so people like Ethan can do the real mission work." A few people laughed because they thought that was the correct social response. My father lifted his glass with a proud little shrug, as if my mother had made a harmless family joke. Ethan leaned into the microphone and made it worse. "My sister keeps America supplied," he said. "I'm the one trying to help America win." He said it with the polished confidence of a man who had never had to account for the lives hidden behind his slogans. I felt every old instinct telling me to stay still, let the moment pass, and preserve the peace for Olivia's sake. Then I heard the fork touch the plate. Teresa Hart had placed it down with such deliberate quiet that the nearest table stopped talking before she spoke. She turned first to my mother, then to Ethan, and finally to me. "Major Mercer," she said, her posture perfectly straight, "please stand up." There was no anger in her voice. That made it more powerful. It was the tone of someone asking for a fact to be recognized, not debated. I stood, because she had already made clear this was not a request for embarrassment. It was a correction. Teresa faced the room. Since logistics has just been dismissed so casually, she said, I would like everyone here to know that 2 years ago, this officer kept a flood evacuation moving when 3 counties were failing at once. She looked at my mother when she said officer, then she looked back to the guests. My son was on one of the medical teams trapped at Cedar Hollow Regional, when the fuel route failed, when one bridge was declared unsafe, and when the oxygen shipment was hours from spoiling. Major Hannah Mercer rebuilt the movement plan in real time. Patients left that hospital because she did not panic. The room went so quiet that I could hear the ice settling inside my father's glass. Teresa did not dramatize. She did not exaggerate. She simply continued. She redirected helicopters, staged ambulances through a secondary corridor, protected the medicine convoy, and kept our receiving sites supplied through the night. My son came home because the evacuation stayed alive. 52 patients reached safe facilities because the evacuation stayed alive. If anyone here thinks that logistics is paperwork, you have never watched a plan become the reason people survive long enough to see morning. My mother's expression changed first, not into guilt, not yet, into confusion. That was the moment she understood she had insulted something she had never bothered to understand. My father stopped smiling. Olivia looked from me to Teresa, then to Ethan, as if she were rearranging pieces of a story she had accepted too quickly. Ethan kept his face composed, but I knew him well enough to see the first crack. He had expected admiration that night. He had not expected a witness with memory, authority, and personal gratitude. I thought that might be the end of it. It would have been enough. Teresa could have sat down, the guests could have applauded politely, and my family could have spent the rest of the evening pretending they had always respected me. But Teresa was not finished. She turned toward Ethan with the calm look of someone stepping into a second conversation. And that, she said, is not the only reason Major Mercer's name matters to me. She reached into the structured envelope resting beside her chair and drew out 3 printed pages clipped together. Mr. Mercer, she said, 3 weeks ago, your company submitted a proposal to the Carolina Emergency Health Network. Ethan's shoulders shifted almost invisibly. Teresa held up the top page just long enough for him to recognize it. The proposal suggested your firm had unusual insight into military distribution strategy because your sister, Major Hannah Mercer, had shaped your understanding of contingency supply movement. It used details from the Cedar Hollow evacuation. It referred to her as a strategic advisor to your company. It implied a relationship that increased your credibility with my board. She paused. Did your sister authorize any of that? Ethan laughed too lightly. Teresa, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We were speaking in broad family terms. He turned toward the guests as if charm could dilute documentation. My sister and I talk. I obviously respect what she does. Then he looked at me and gave me the expression he always used when he wanted silent family compliance. Hannah knows how this works. It wasn't official. My mother finally found her voice and rushed to support him. I'm sure it was only meant as background, she said. Ethan would never intentionally misrepresent her. That was the first truly painful sentence of the night, because it came so quickly. Teresa did not argue. She simply asked me the question. Major Mercer, did you advise his company? No. Did you permit them to describe you as a strategic advisor? No. Did you share operational details from Cedar Hollow for commercial use? No. Each answer landed harder, because I kept my voice even. I did not need to sound wounded. The facts were enough. Teresa placed the pages on the table in front of Olivia. Then this is not background, she said. It is borrowed credibility at minimum, and potentially much more than that. Olivia did not touch the pages right away. She was looking directly at Ethan now. My father cleared his throat, trying to recover control of the room. Now hold on, he said. He probably used the wrong language. That doesn't mean there was bad intent. He looked toward me with the familiar expression that translated every injury into an overreaction if it happened to me. Hannah, you know your brother admires you. I turned to him for the first time since the toast began. Admiration does not authorize my name, I said, and it does not authorize him to convert army work into a sales advantage. My mother opened her hands toward the guests. Can we please not do this in front of everyone? She asked, as though everyone else had been introduced into the humiliation only after the truth arrived. Olivia finally picked up the proposal. She read the section Teresa indicated, then another, then a third. Her face stayed composed, but her eyes sharpened. You told me this network already trusted you because of your experience, she said to Ethan. You said your family had a strong service background and that Hannah had helped you think through distribution needs. Ethan said, I did not lie. She is in logistics. Olivia looked at him for a long second. That sentence is exactly the problem, she said. You took the one thing my mother was thanking her for and flattened it into a marketing bullet. Around us, people tried very hard not to look like they were listening. I wish I could say I felt triumphant. Mostly, I felt tired. Not because Teresa had spoken, because I knew, with absolute clarity, that if she had remained silent, my parents would have gone home satisfied with the version of the evening where I had been cut down for the entertainment of the room. My mother reached for my hand then, perhaps hoping a visible gesture might restore her image. I moved my hand to my lap before she touched it. No, I said quietly. The scene was not created when the truth came out. The scene started when you introduced me, as if my work existed to make Ethan look bigger. Teresa nodded once. Then she addressed the room again, this time more broadly. Many of you come from business, finance, or medicine, she said. You already understand that nobody survives on brilliance alone. Surgery without sterilization fails. Aviation without maintenance fails. Emergency medicine without supply chains fails. If you want a simpler phrase, then here it is. When people say just logistics, they are usually describing the invisible work they depend on most. That line changed the room. People stopped treating the moment like family drama and began hearing it as a professional truth. Ethan shifted his chair back. I think this is becoming unfair, he said. I was trying to build something. Everyone in this room uses connections. Teresa's expression did not change. There is a difference between a connection and a false implication of professional endorsement, she said. If my board had approved your proposal on that basis, you would have benefited materially from your sister's service without her knowledge. Olivia set the pages down carefully. Did you tell anyone else she worked with you? She asked. Ethan hesitated. It was not a long hesitation, but it was long enough. I referenced her experience, he said. That was the second reveal. Olivia looked at him the way people look at a cracked foundation they had mistaken for polished stone. Reference to whom? She asked. Ethan started naming a hospital consultant, 2 procurement contacts, and a private investor before he seemed to hear himself. My father muttered, "This is getting out of hand," and stood as if posture alone could repair reality. My mother looked at me with wet eyes now, the kind that arrive not at the moment of cruelty, but at the moment of social cost. Hannah, say something, she whispered. Help us calm this down. That request might have hurt most of all. I looked at her and felt 20 years rearranging themselves. Every school award Ethan won had become proof of his potential. Every hard thing I did had been translated into resilience, practicality, or duty, words my parents used when they wanted to praise me without granting status. When I accepted my commission, my mother told people I had chosen a structured life. When I made captain early, she said I had always liked lists. When I made major, she congratulated me and immediately asked whether Ethan's company might someday benefit from my contacts. She had never wanted to know what I had done. She wanted to know whether my work could decorate the family brand. So I answered carefully. I am saying something now, I told her. You do not get to ask me for peace after using me as a punchline. You do not get to call my career small until someone more important corrects you, and Ethan does not get to sell access built from things he mocked in public. My voice did not rise. It did not need to. I had spent enough years trying to be understandable. For the first time, I was letting the room hear the whole sentence. Olivia closed the proposal folder and stood. The band stopped pretending not to notice. I am not walking down an aisle tonight while this sits on the table, Olivia said. There was no drama in her tone, only decision. She looked first at Teresa, then at me, and finally at Ethan. If your company used Hannah's service record, implied endorsement, or borrowed operational credibility without permission, I need the full truth before we take another step. Ethan protested immediately. He said postponing anything would be humiliating. Olivia answered, "Humiliation is hearing a woman's military career reduced to a joke at her own brother's wedding. Accountability is what happens after." A few people lowered their eyes into their drinks. Teresa asked me quietly whether I wanted to leave. It was the kindest question anyone had asked me all evening. I told her I wanted 5 minutes of air first. She walked with me onto the terrace overlooking the river. The music behind the glass had stopped completely now. "I'm sorry for the timing," she said, "but I would have regretted silence." I told her she had nothing to apologize for. She smiled slightly. "For what it's worth," she said, "Luke still tells people the calmest person he ever saw in a disaster was a logistics major with a grease pencil and no patience for ego." That almost made me laugh. When I went back inside, the reception had shifted into clusters of low conversation. Olivia and Teresa were speaking with the event coordinator. My father stood near the bar, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. My mother approached me alone. "I truly did not know," she said. "That sentence used to work on me. It used to sound like the beginning of repair. That night, it sounded like a confession of negligence." "Exactly," I said. "You didn't know because you never asked. You preferred a version of me that made Ethan easier to admire." She cried then, but I no longer felt responsible for making her tears meaningful. Ethan came over last. He had abandoned the charming tone. "You could help fix this," he said. "If you tell Olivia I never meant harm, she'll calm down." I stared at him. "You built a sales narrative around my service," I said. "You repeated my work when it made you look credible, and mocked it when it made you feel superior. Those are not accidents. Those are choices." He said everyone exaggerated in business. I told him he would send written corrections to every contact who received that proposal, and that he would state clearly I had never advised, endorsed, or participated in his company. For once, he understood I was not negotiating. The wedding did not happen that night. Whether it happens at all is between Olivia and Ethan, and I have no interest in writing that ending for them. What I know is this. 3 days later, Teresa copied me on the retraction request sent to the health network, and 2 investors asked Ethan for explanations he could not soften with family charm. My father left me a voicemail that sounded like a man hearing his own house differently. My mother wrote a long apology that spent less time defending herself than any apology she had ever given me. It was not enough, but it was the first one not written as performance. I met my mother for coffee 2 weeks later because boundaries are stronger when spoken aloud. I told her if she wanted a relationship with me, she would have to stop translating my service into something small and stop using it when convenient. She listened more than she spoke. Maybe that is the most I can honestly promise. Some people change all at once. Some only change after humiliation strips their habits bare. As for me, I went back to work the following Monday, where nobody needed me to be impressive. They just needed the right fuel in the right place at the right hour. Funny how the real mission still sounds like logistics until your life depends on it.